Hey everyone, Rho here. Before we begin today, our next week's special has finally arrived and will begin on Monday as we kick off our chapter war. Like our Traitor Legion war before, we will pit the loyal chapters against each other and you will vote to see who is the strongest. Which chapter is the Imperium's best hope? However, with that said, on to today. Today we discuss why Roboute Guilliman was made Lord Commander. And we ask in hindsight, was it still the right decision? General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. So the history of the Imperium tells us that Roboute Guilliman will be appointed the Lord Commander in the aftermath of the heresy, assuming the title from his brother Rogal Dorn. Now, Rogal was given the title during the heresy, in order to be able to marshal the Imperium's defense of Terra. As the Emperor's Praetorian, we know he was on the throne world when the conflict broke out, and he was one of the Primarchs who clearly had the Emperor's complete trust. So it made sense for Dorn to assume such a position whilst the Emperor was indisposed upon the throne. Which, okay, makes it sound like he was on the toilet, but you get my understanding. So the question is, why did Roboute then assume the role after the heresy, in place of his brother Rogal? Well, before we begin, as of yet we don't actually have a true answer within the lore. Once the siege is over, ending the heresy series, and we move into the scouring, then we'll finally get to see the events firsthand, finding out the true motives and rationale behind many decisions, ones that will guide the Imperium's future. So, as confident as we might be, until then, we're really left to our opinions and best assumptions. Now, what we have seen within the lore is that quite clearly Rogal himself believed that Guilliman was the best man for the job, or at least we're certainly given that impression. Within the novel Master of Mankind by Aaron Dembski Bowden, we get a glimpse of Dorn having a fairly vocal debate with Malcador and the talons of the Emperor, and during it we hear Dorn utter the line, "You quote my own brother at me. Roboute is not here, Oblivion Knight. Would that he were. In his absence, I am Lord Commander of the Imperium." Now for me, this isn't Dorn stating he's only the Lord Commander in Roboute's absence as a fact. It's more him giving his opinion, that he feels his brother is the better man for such a position. Or at least he concedes if Roboute were here, then there would at least be a discussion about it. It's pretty clear Rogal holds his brother in high regard. In virtually every novel throughout the Siege of Terra, it feels like there's a line from Rogal praising Guilliman, never doubting his brother is on the way, that he will reach Terra. And well, this respect very much appears to be reciprocated. Guilliman had Rogal as one of his favoured dauntless few, which we saw from the novel Know No Fear by Dan Abnett. The brothers he knew if he fought beside, he could win any war. He refers to them as the dauntless few, the ones he can most truly depend upon to do what they were made to do. Dorn and his legion are one. And within Dark Imperium Plague Wars by Guy Haley, we hear Guilliman utter, "Lord Rogal Dorn and I, for example, both inherited his capacity for strategy and contingency planning, but in combination our talents were unique. Dorn was a greater builder than I ever was, and I a far better administrator. So even from these two brief comments, it's clear Guilliman also holds Rogal in very high esteem. And perhaps it's that last remark that gives us the most logical answer, the one most people would naturally assume, and I a far better administrator. Guilliman is renowned as most likely the best administrator amongst the Primarchs. All the Primarchs were generals beyond our comprehension. As he himself stated in that quote, many excelled particularly in strategy and contingency, Rogal being one. But Guilliman's particular talent was in the outside the battlefield arena, the want for a better expression, larger picture, the empire building aspect, the infrastructure. There's a reason Guilliman had Ultramar and his brothers did not, and it's not because he's the best military general. It's because he thinks beyond the battle. While many of his brothers concentrated on the completion of a campaign, conquering a world before moving on to their next orders, which many could do faster than Guilliman, Guilliman ensured that every world he left behind was ready and able to contribute to the Imperium. He ensured that garrisons were left, supply lines created, that each new system became embedded within the 500 worlds of Ultramar, that seamlessly the operations and relations adapted, not only for the furtherment of his crusade, but for the betterment of the people, and thus the Imperium. And as such, whereas other brothers would have to wait for resupply or reinforcement, Guilliman was able to prosecute multiple campaigns seamlessly. Quite simply, Guilliman excelled at the day-to-day stuff. He knew how to run an empire. Now, it's a common mistake to think Guilliman was the only Primarch to have his own territory, because he wasn't. Many of his other brothers controlled more than just their homeworld, Rogal Dorn actually being one. The difference is none rivaled Ultramar in size, and Guilliman just did that particular aspect better. Perturabo was most likely Guilliman's mirror in his brothers for the administration talent. However, as we know, he wasn't exactly an option after the heresy. So, with all that in mind, it would make logical sense for Guilliman to be the Lord Commander. You can completely understand, given Rogal's respect for him, and Guilliman's particular talent area, why Rogal would possibly concede his position to Roboute. There is also the circumstances to be considered, the repercussions of the siege. Quite simply, Rogal was a broken man. Now, don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying Rogal had suddenly become useless, because he had not. He's still a Primarch. He was still a demigod amongst demigods. But from everything we currently know, we know he becomes overwhelmed with grief at the Emperor's interment to the Golden Throne. His feelings, whether rightly or wrongly, of failure. We've seen throughout the Siege of Terra series that Rogal is feeling the weight of the Imperium on his shoulders, and it is weighing on him more and more as the siege continues. Rogal feels responsible for not only the Imperium, but for their father's survival, and in that, with the Emperor becoming broken, silent, Rogal will feel he failed. Rogal Dorn himself will find his brother Sanguinius dead. He will find the Emperor's broken body. he will carry him from the vengeful spirit. Listen to his last words and place him within the Golden Throne. And Rogal Dorn will feel responsible for all of it. And this isn't like his brothers. This isn't Guilliman feeling the pressure in the current timeline. This isn't Lionel Johnson and Russ's grief when they make it back to the throne world. Because he was the Praetorian. He was the one withdrawn from the Crusade to fortify Terra. It was his duty to protect his father, his emperor. And he will feel like he failed. That he failed him. That he failed humanity. While Rogal will still have all the talents he always had, and go on to give the Imperium many victories, it's undoubted his mindset is going to be dramatically altered in the heresy's aftermath. He is very much, in a sense, broken. And for me, this will be symbolically represented by the Iron Cage incident, the conflict against Perturabo, where the Imperial fists will almost be entirely wiped out. As always, opinions are mixed on Dorn's true intentions here, but it certainly appears his grief and rage against his traitor brother led him to make a decision he quite possibly wouldn't have made before. For me, in really taking into account just how much Dorn is expected to be affected by the heresy's outcome, I genuinely expect him to relinquish the position of Lord Commander out of his sense of failure, out of his feelings of guilt. Rogal will feel he's failed, and that he doesn't deserve to be in that position. When you combine that with the respect he has for his brother Guilliman, it's logical to assume he'd hand it over to Roboute, or at least relinquish the position with the understanding that Roboute would be his successor. And considering I don't expect the Lion to still be around to object, I think all the other brothers left, Jagatai, Korax, Vulcan and Russ, would have no issues with it, with none of them wanting the position themselves. It would be unanimous. Now, side note, I don't think Guilliman will reveal he's been messing around trying to build his own Imperium, which was why he was late. Because then I'd think rather than make him Lord Commander, there's a good chance Rogal might just take his head off. But I digress. That to me is the most logical reason for Guilliman to ultimately assume the Lord Commander position. Now, the alternative is when Rogal brings his father's mangled body before the Golden Throne, as Malcador's final strength imbues the Emperor enough to utter his final instructions. Maybe the Emperor simply tells Dorn that Guilliman is the one to become Lord Commander. He is the one best suited for the role. We know the Emperor has foreseen the future, a time when long-lost heroes return, which undoubtedly would have been Guilliman returning in the current timeline. He could make a decision based off of that making Guilliman Lord Commander is a step towards that final fight back against chaos. Considering one of the descriptions the Emperor used in his and Guilliman's reunion was "my greatest son," it wouldn't surprise me if this was the direction the narrative went. Personally, I don't see why the Emperor would feel the need for Dorn to step down, as I think Dorn would be more than capable of the role. Despite his feelings of guilt during the siege, I think he did a fantastic job, and the Emperor would most likely know that Dorn would give it to Guilliman anyway, so I don't think he would feel the need to give him an order. However, the possibility is there. So, with Rogal handing over the position to his brother Guilliman, given what we know 10,000 years later, was it the right decision? Well, this is a full-on discussion in itself. Regardless of the decay and state of it, the fact is the Imperium survived for the next 10,000 years. So it'd be hard to argue that Guilliman wasn't the best choice. He implemented his Codex Astartes, and the Imperium held off every threat that arose. Admittedly, it could be argued that Abaddon was playing the long game, and actually was having a victory with each and every Black Crusade. But hey, the Imperium was doing alright until Cadia's destruction, although the Sons of Dawn did have to implement the Last Wall Protocol to save it, bringing back all their successors to essentially reinstall the Legion. So there is that argument. Personally, I think the abolishment of the Legions was probably a mistake, one that Guilliman himself has privately considered. And we know Dorn most certainly wouldn't have done that. So it could be argued that perhaps the Imperium would have been better off under Rogal. There certainly would have been a better chance of truly wiping out the traitor legions or Abaddon with the legions. However, there is also the prospect of a legion turning traitor, which could have been a death sentence for the Imperium. I find it highly unlikely, but hey, you can never say never. I think it could be a good what-if conversation one day. What if Rogal remained Lord Commander? Maybe we'll get around to that one after next week. Overall, I think the big problem was Rogal's state of mind. Had he been the Praetorian of old, well, the argument could be a strong one. Regardless, with hindsight, with what we know of history, the job that he is doing now, Roboute Guilliman was and is Lord Commander of the entire Imperium. And as long as the Imperium continues to survive, he's proven to be the best decision. But as always everyone, what do you think? Why do you think the Imperium turned to Roboute Guilliman to be the Lord Commander? Why did Rogal step down from the position? Was it a simple fact that he knew Guilliman was better suited? Or did Rogal's state of mind play a larger role? Was it Rogal's feelings of failure, the traumatic events of the heresy, that truly led him to make the decision? And in light of Guilliman revealing the Codex Astartes, did Rogal come to think he'd made a mistake? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow, and if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.